everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of The New Unfiltered. My name is Alexa Curtis, and I am a former Disney host, and now I own Be Fearless Inc., as well as this weekly podcast where I interview founders and successful executives to really help everyone listening figure out what you guys in particular want to do for a living, as well as what you want to do if you are wanting to embark on entrepreneurship. So last week, I walked you through my time in London so far, and I hope you enjoyed that episode because I enjoyed talking about how different the UK is versus the US. In particular, I think networking here for me has been really awesome because I've been able to meet some phenomenal people. One in particular who I met at an event a few months ago in London. And you may know a company that she used to work for, Canada Goose. Penny Brook is a mission driven marketing, experience, and C suite business leader. She's worked at brands like Clark's, Philips Electronics, and Mulberry, but her decade long career at Canada Goose as CMO saw her take the brand global with tons of growth and additional revenue, which was amazing. And then she left and now started a company where she is the CEO and founder at Sustain Innovate, which marks a new expansive mission where she partners with brands and sector coalitions to support their sustainable economic growth. And so where I actually met her was at a event that focused highly on sustainability with a friend of mine, Tiffany Dark. So before I introduce Penny in, make sure that you're following The New Unfiltered on social media at The New Unfiltered, as well as subscribe to Stay Fearless or Die Trying, your weekly guide to running a startup and being a successful founder in the show notes. Penny, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. It's great to be chatting with you again, Alexa.
You are such a gem. And when I met you, I remember I beelined for you because I wanted to ask you about not only like entrepreneurship, but what companies like Canada Goose look for when they're hiring. And that video actually really performed well online. So I would love to get into that throughout the episode. But you left a major company like Canada Goose and you've now gone on to being a founder. So what has that process been like so far?
So it has its good and its bad days. And I think that's generally the case for whether you're a founder or whether you're working in-house for a brand, or whether you work for an agency, or whether you're actually trying to find your first gig. So I think that's the first thing to say is that this is a learning curve. I've been working for like 26 years now, and I am on my tippy toes learning right now. And that's a different gear for me because I went from knowing a business pretty much inside out. And I'm not saying that I couldn't learn. I did learn. I continually did. But being very confident in what I could bring to the table, and also my expertise, especially as a subject matter expert in marketing and business development. And then you step over to the other side of the fence, which is much more kind of service orientated. You're, like you do so expertly, creating the brand of you and leaning into that much more, which when you work in-house and you're working at a rapid pace for a brand that's accelerating, you don't actually put a ton of work into the brand of you. And that's maybe a tip that I would give to your audience, which is no matter whether you're starting your own thing up as an entrepreneur or whether you're in-house, it's really important to define your own identity and remember what you stand for, because often that's the thing that actually got you the job in the first place.
Brand identity is one of my core focuses with my personal brand and also helping a lot of these young people figure out and scale what they want to do. So when you were at Canada Goose and was it prior that you were at Mulberry and Philips, or was it post Canada Goose? I think you went from Canada to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it was prior. So I started out working in PR agencies and design-led ad agencies. And then I went over to Mulberry, then to Clark's Shoes. Then I worked as a stint in a smaller bespoke footwear company, then off to Amsterdam to Philips, and then to Canada Goose, where I worked between Toronto and where I'm sitting today, Switzerland.
Super cool. And talk to me about Canada Goose. So working there, you were there for quite a long time. Do you remember what the company was like when you first got the job? Because I think it was further into your time there that like social media really became kind of a thing. I would say Canada Goose was always a household name, but I would assume with TikTok and Instagram and all of those new platforms, you really had to kind of adjust any form of a strategy.
Oh, absolutely. So if I give you context in the 26 years I've been working, and I'm carbon dating myself there, you go from a world where you were doing these beautifully packaged bursts of communications, marketing, whatever you want to call it, that would be a couple of times a year, usually like a spring or a summer or an autumn, winter. And once you delivered the first one and it was live, you were kind of planning for the next one. But there are pretty clear different levers that you used in the marketing mix. You pre-planned them, and then it went live. And then fast forward the last sort of 10 years where I was working for Canada Goose, you had the progression of multiple different social channels, always on, a movement away from TV spots because people weren't actually watching the ad breaks, because TV became Netflix, and that whole kind of way of consuming your films and your favorite programming changed entirely. And then you had what we would call the kind of always on era. So you went from these beautifully like packaged moments where you communicated to a two-way dialogue, always on, plus those key moments where you created your kind of like big splashes. So I would say that it went from being pretty sort of controllable to very content intensive. The big thing I've really liked in the change, though, is that it used to be really push, like marketing and communications and PR was push. We think we are this way, and we hope you agree with us. Whereas today, it's two-way conversation. The consumer gets a chance to vote. And that means it keeps brands on its toes. We have to be much more transparent these days, which is all for the good. And we have to excel at our experience as well. So, there's a lot of debate about cancel culture, but that's the reality of the world that we live in today.
Cancel culture is unfortunately the reality, and also something that young people really have to think about when they're thinking about job hunting, when they're thinking about kind of anything they post on social media. You did, when I asked you that question, Penny, at the event, I literally thought, like, wow, this woman is going to be a successful entrepreneur regardless of what she does. Because you actually came onto the camera with such a good presence. And a lot of founders in particular struggle with that. So, would you say is like the Penny Brook personal brand, your own LinkedIn, the way that you have always put yourself to be online, has that been something that has consciously been in your mind throughout the companies that you've worked at, how you want to be perceived online?
I think that I got much better at that over the last couple of years. So I have had the benefit, being a C-suite at Canada Goose, to do lots of talking opportunities across the world. And, it's interesting what you were saying and the difference between North America and Europe. The way in which interviews are conducted and what people are looking for actually is quite different across the pond. I don't know if you found that, Alexa.
So different.
Yeah, so different. And then go over to mainland China, it's different again. So I've had an amazing privilege to be able to kind of like understand the media landscape, understand the messages that are relatable within different markets. And I'm not kind of like trying to make everybody the same within a market. It's just that there's different cultural nuances that it's really important to be aware of.
There's so many different cultural parts to be aware of. But when you're working with a company, and these are the three major companies, right, that you've worked with, are both US and UK, I mean, worldwide. So was it only the Canada Goose, like UK, you were working, or I would assume global Canada Goose?
No, no, it was global. So I joined. So it was nearly 11 years that I was with this amazing brand. And actually, when I joined, there was only, I think there was like 7 or 8 of us in the marketing team, and I was in Europe. So my first gig was to bring the brand to Europe. And then from there, I was asked to take on the global role as CMO and take the brand not just kind of like to Europe, but to the world. So we launched in mainland China and various other markets. And as you do that, it's really important to have a very clear understanding and ownership for everybody who works in that brand of what the brand stands for, no matter where you are in the world, but then also to have exceptional people on the ground that understand the cultural nuances so that your brand shows up in the right way, no matter where people are.
Did they educate you on that when you started at those kind of larger corporate companies, or was that something that a lot of training goes along with? I'm curious because I've actually never really worked for a larger corporate company besides Disney. I only ever participated in like entrepreneurial things and then cold emailed my own show to them. So
Yeah.
when somebody wants to go and like get hired at one of these top tier companies, is it really valuable to walk in the door having your own kind of experience and research on something like that?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think it shows awareness of your market. So, I mean, if you're just working with, not just working with North America, that's more global economy. So if you're working in North America, only, then it's really important that you understand the differences between states in North America and you're prepared to demonstrate that. And you've done your homework and you understand the markets where the service or the product or the brand is doing well, and areas where, you know, marketplaces where they can do better, and you have insights on why you think that way. So it's the same when you're going for a global brand, but you're just doing it on a country basis. And you really look at, you know, not tens and tens of different countries. You look at the top 3 to 5 countries that that brand has opportunity to do business in, and it's great to demonstrate that you've done some research. You don't have to have worked in these countries because everybody has to start somewhere, but showing that you've done your research and you've sort of like scratched beneath the surface of some of the opportunity is very impressive.
It is impressive. And it also, I think, sets you apart. I talk a lot about like being the 1% and how people need to show up to the table knowing like their own vision statement. I think even if they don't want to be an entrepreneur, if you can show up to the table knowing what you offer and like what you bring to a company when you're trying to get a job, you become a lot more appealing to get hired. As the CMO at Canada Goose, did you do any hiring in particular, or were you more working on like the marketing overall strategy?
No, I was so in my team we had about when I was there was, you know, between 80 to 110 globally, because I was looking after marketing and experience, which experience being some people would call it customer services. So it's a broad group across mainland China, Hong Kong, New York, Toronto, London, and Switzerland. So that was of course a lot to do with people, because the number one asset that a business has is its people and culture, because without that the work doesn't get done in the best way. So the hiring process is extremely important to me, and all hires to a certain level, I would always meet the person, even if it was just for a quick 15 minutes or half an hour, just to sort of sense check the cultural fit and sense check the desire to want to work for that brand. I think that curiosity is always a great signifier to me, and research done before an interview, that somebody has a really great interest to go to that company in particular and isn't just sort of hanging out to find any kind of job.
It's so funny because Canada Goose was one of my first sponsors. Like you guys sent me a jacket when I had just started my blog back in like 2011, 12 or 13. I was, I think like 12 or 13 or 14. And this is when influencer marketing had just started. Were you even at the company in that year, like around 2011, 2012?
I think that I was just on my way. So I started in 2013. So we may have
Okay.
just missed each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny when I look back because now it's like they would never just go ahead and like send out a jacket, right, to an influencer. There's such a process to go through that. So I'm curious, like
Well,
what
yeah.
you, or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, there's these days there's a sort of legal process because when you are listed, it's really important that everything is transparent and above board. So when you're a private company, you can give somebody a coat and hope they wear it, but when you're a company that's listed, it's really important that you go through proper contracts, and that's important anyway, I think, because it ensures that both parties are clear on what the expectation, and that also the influencer is covered.
Did you have any experiences at Canada Goose, marketing wise, where you feel like the brand overall had perhaps not made the best decision with just any of like the strategies that you embarked on?
No, I mean, I think working at Canada Goose is like working for a different company every year. And as you know, in entrepreneurship, not every decision is going to be the right decision, but quite often something that didn't work out. So we also talk about failing fast. Working at CG, you had to be an entrepreneur. You had to have an entrepreneurial spirit, which means that you would have an appetite to take calculated risks. But it was really important that if those risks didn't net out well, that you learned from them and you moved on quickly. So I wouldn't frame it as failure. I would just say that it was a very much an environment of entrepreneurship, which ultimately is about failing on some stuff and getting some wins in others. But as you can tell from the scale of the business, there were more wins than losses.
So many wins. Oh my gosh. And now it's like, even if you're an influencer and you're trying to like cold pitch or email or get type of some form of free product, which I say to a lot of aspiring or current creators, is there's so much with corporate companies that goes on behind the scenes. And I think a lot of creators will just like send out a pitch and it's a few sentences and think that they should or I don't want to use the word worthy, but in a sense, like worthy of getting this. And when you're a brand like a Canada Goose, you're looking at very high end, expensive product. And I would assume that there's like a thorough vetting process, right? Of like, is this the target market? If you're going to be posting about and featuring an $800 plus jacket and your demographic is teenagers, there's no synergy, right? So I would think that that's something that you also have to think of nowadays if you're wanting to be like in a CMO role.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if we're talking about influencers, I mean, you think about influencers and you think about their profile. So, in many respects, influencers are the kind of like the new media platforms. And I don't mean to devalue a person into a platform, but what I mean is that there's the power there for that person to reach a certain following. And what brands do and what influencer agencies do is really make sure that you're strategically pairing up the brand and the brand's ambition. Maybe there's a product launch of a new perfume or something, and it's sustainable. It's the most sustainable perfume in the USA or in UK. Then it's important to profile your influencers on people that have posted around scent before or have a lifestyle kind of veering to that, and have an authentic knowledge base and sustainability and have fans that follow them.
Sustainability at Canada Goose, is that one of their core, and I probably sound like an idiot, but is that one of the core thought, what's the word? You know, core values at Canada Goose aside from just the jackets and the products?
Yeah, so we do, talk about sustainability with a capital S. Um, it's about like societal, positive societal and nature positive outcomes. And when you look at a product, and this is why luxury is quite interesting. So when you look at a product that is fairly made, is well made, so that it lasts a long time and that it's coveted as a second purchase or even a third purchase on a resale market. And if you are covered with a warranty because the brand believes so much in its quality, then that is inherently sustainable. So I think quite often consumers think about sustainability in terms of, I would hate to even use the word green, but in terms of, how green it is. But actually, to be sustainable is inherently to minimize waste and optimize efficiency, to leave as little sort of impact on society and the world around us, whilst creating products that last for a long time, and when they're no longer needed, don't do further harm. So it's if you are buying a product, any luxury product or any premium product, which is designed to last, inherently you're buying a sustainable product.
Oh, so interesting. Sustainability also is obviously one of the core focuses at what you do now, post Canada Goose. And just to confirm, you left on your own will, right, at Canada Goose? Like there wasn't a layoff. Did you feel like there was like you had hit a wall or like there was anything in particular that made you want to leave?
I it was very, very hard to leave that brand because that brand became family. And you get to a point, I'm 46 now, and you get to a point when you think, I can continue on this path, or I can listen to a voice in my head which says that I should go and do something on my own, and I should go and do something different. And I've always known that I wanted to do something which was at the benefit of multiple businesses, that I wanted to harness the 26 years that I've had across different sectors to help business grow, but to do it in a way that was really sustainable. And the challenge is that sort of sustainability is often seen as a cost to a business. But I firmly believe, and I've seen examples of sustainability actually being a thing that makes a business grow. So it's a different way of looking at it. And sustainable growth, when I say sustainable growth, I mean that with a lowercase s, which just basically means growth which can continue over time. I'm not talking about brands which are bought and then pumped up and flipped over. I'm talking about brands that are nurtured over time, continue to grow profitably, but actually at the same time as they scale, they innovate to make sure that as they're scaling, they're doing it in the best possible way for people and for planet.
Whenever I think about sustainability and like everything wrong with the world, right? I think anyone's mindset goes to like turtles are dying, there's trash all over the street, there's just junk and people compiling things up and never getting rid of it. And when I met you at that event, Tiffany, who was speaking, was interviewing Diana, who wrote a really incredible book about sustainability. And I actually didn't realize how far gone we are as a culture with the amount of stuff people have amassed and the amount of fast fashion pieces people purchase and what that does to the environment. So before we get into the company that you're at now, at Canada Goose, can you walk us through some of those core values and what made you really realize that sustainability is something that needs to be so heavily talked about, especially to this younger demographic?
So, I mean, it's interesting. You're talking about Tiffany. She did a wonderful piece recently about plastics in the sports world, and I think it's little known. And even if you look at something like a fleece, because it's soft and fluffy, people don't think that it's actually a polymer, a plastic. So if we're thinking about products, a lot of products are made from synthetics, and inherently that's not great. But that also means that a lot of products shed microplastics. It also means that that product will never disappear. So with that thought, it's really important for brands to think about how they can create products that can disappear if the consumer wants them to in the gentlest way, but also are desirable and high touch and last the distance. So there's a lot of innovation, and we talk a lot about reimagining, which is basically innovation, to renew, to think about doing things differently. And whilst I was at Canada Goose, we created a fleece called the Kind Fleece, which is actually a mix of recycled wool and lyocell, and a little bit of recycled nylon, just because you need some stretch. And this was a proof that you can create and innovate with new fabrications and solutions whilst creating a really high-end, high-touch product. So I would encourage business to be thinking in these new innovative ways, because the new product development can be amazing. And the way it can make your people feel about working in your company is also huge cultural equity.
And what does that mean, cultural equity?
I would say that cultural equity is how invested your employee base is in your company and your brand, beyond getting their pay pack and getting their package. So it's about the often unmeasured quantity of, I would say, commitment that an employee has to the brand, which goes beyond kind of standard commitments. It's about being an advocate for your brand because you truly stand by it, or your business. And when a business chooses to integrate a much more sustainable mindset, then this is inherently a byproduct of it, is that you have a better culture, because human beings want to work for companies that are good for the world. They don't tend to want to work for companies that are bad for the world or bad for other people.
And there's also so many companies out there, right, that do focus on sustainability, or probably even have an element of it. I mean, Canada Goose is top of the top, but at Mulberry, at Philips, which I know is more electronics, were they focusing on any of that there? Or was it really when you entered Canada Goose that you were like, okay, I found my footing. I know that this is the kind of company that I want to work at?
Well, I think if you have a look at the, we talked a lot about the environmental part of sustainability, but if you have a look at the societal part of sustainability, is like, how do you leave a positive impact upon society? And working at Clark's was founded in the 18th
Oh, I
century by
love Clark's.
yeah, I love it
Yeah,
so much. I've got, if you talk about that cultural equity affinity,
I
I
know.
still have tons of it for Clark's shoes. And even though it was a it was a Quaker business. So
No.
the Clarks, yeah, the Clarks were Quakers. So they actually built a village that ended up being called Street, just outside of Glastonbury, which is a place everyone knows because of the festival.
Of course.
Um, and that's where their workers lived, and there was shops and there was subsidies, and it created a whole community. And I think that was a really that's probably one of the kind of early community founded companies, and it creates a different feeling. It's investing back in your employees, it's caring about them holistically, not just sort of extracting their labor, which is really important, because the more people feel that they are taken care of, the more that they will invest.
Yeah, and so while you were at Canada Goose and then you left and started this company, you've been probably hiring people. What has that process been like? So going from being at a major corporation where there's that whole HR team to now on your own with entrepreneurship, which I can certainly relate to in the sense of knowing what the behind the scenes of being an entrepreneur is like, and that day-to-day grind, and it never stops. On top of that, I'm also curious if you have any experience working with younger folks, because I've done a lot of research that they actually say Gen Z in particular is one of the most lazy, quote unquote, lazy uh, generations of like not wanting to work as hard and not being able to like get a grip on how to properly present themselves in a room. So I'm curious, like going now into entrepreneurship, that side, and then also that hiring process.
Yeah, so I mean, I think um, I would love to challenge that Gen Z is kind of lazy. I think, every generation comes with its new kind of perspective. And when we think about Gen Z, I mean, I'm going to start with what I love, because
Yeah.
I'm a kind of like an optimist. Optimist. What I love is how engaged they are on topics, and that they are brave with having a point of view. What I don't love is that sometimes the research isn't done, and it tends to be kind of like whichever way the wind is blowing. So that's where I'd come back to: be the brand of distinctive you, having your own point of view, and whilst being kind of respectful, being able to kind of air that is important. Nobody wants to hear the same point of view without curiosity or challenge time and time again. Also, Gen Zs have lots of side hustles, and I love that. I always used to think, oh, I have to have my day job, and that's all I could do. And so I actually think we can be inspired by that. I mean, Da Vinci did a few jobs, didn't he? So it's proven to work. So I love them about them, and they're creatives, content creators. I think that there are only 24 hours in the day, so with Gen Z, I think this kind of lazy bone maybe is mixed up with the focus, right? Giving things the right focus. It's a social media backdrop that Gen Z have been brought up in. It's in kind of like 5 3-second reels, sound bites, and that does not make of a great interview, right? So it's really about understanding how you consume your content in a different way in which you actually show yourself, and how you present yourself. And the process of presenting yourself is really different. I also think that Gen Z had to encounter COVID. And what happened there was, there's a lot of people coming in first time with jobs that didn't get to hear what was going on in the office. I've not done a huge amount of training through my 26 years. My work environment was my training environment, and I learned so much from the people around me, just picking up the conversation, watching different scenarios, seeing different sort of people archetypes. And that's something that's missed for Gen Z in a large proportion. So yes, I think that there is opportunity for that generation, like every generation. But I would rather open up the conversation of like how other generations can help them fill the gap, and can help them develop in other areas that, due to kind of pandemic or geopolitical situations, they haven't had the chance to experience.
How do you think though that how do we create that conversation, right? Like say they're working for somebody, they're working for a boss or somebody who's older than them, and they are perhaps presenting ideas, and maybe their ideas are getting denied, and their thought process is like, well, my boss just doesn't get me. My boss doesn't understand me. What would you say to that young person? Because through a lot of the research that I'm thinking of, and also this discussion I saw, I believe it was on NPR, it was a whole long video about this. They're saying, like, we present ideas to our bosses, and our bosses don't understand social media, and they almost reject the ideas, and they don't give us the time of day. And I think it really, probably depends, number one, on the idea, but even more so, how is it being presented, and is it being done in a form that is like approachable and understanding to the potential boss, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a couple of themes here. So I'd say, before anything, if I think about it from the other side of the fence, which is the boss's side of the fence, um, there is a lot that goes on at various different levels of line management that the people that report into that line manager won't have visibility of. So there's extra additional workload, there's confidentiality on projects that are going on that they can't talk about. So I think that consideration is important to really think about your timing, and to be empathetic to the boss in terms of when is the right time to approach them on something. So being able to read that person, read the room, is really important. Timing is everything. I also think it's really important to be be reliable first. So I know that sounds dull, but
Yeah.
reliably do what you've been employed to do and do it super well. And then those ideas will have more traction. What I mean, that's one of my pet peeves, is when somebody doesn't do kind of like the basics of their role, but has all of these kind of great ideas, and ideas are wonderful in the right place, but doesn't deliver on the day job. So I think that's really important, because then you get given permission to come with new ways of working, new ideas around things, and business context. Put it in the context, make it easy for that person to understand why this is such a good idea or concept. You know, it's not just, we've talked a lot about social media, but it's just not about, it's about an experiential concept. It's about going at a brief in a different way. And I think that these are all valid things to do, but always to put it in the context of the so what, and why should that person you're presenting to care?
I have so thoroughly enjoyed this discussion with you, and I would love for you to just do a little plug about, the new company that you're running. Any advice for people who are wanting to leave their corporate job and now go back into something like entrepreneurship before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk about doing what feels good. And that sounds quite simple, but when I talk about what feels good, it's the feeling that you have before your brain catches up. And it's kind of an animal instinct. And it's one, I think, that in our everyday life, when we're on social all the time, we're rushing, we're doing a lot of workouts, that actually we kind of don't listen to. So listen to that feel good or feel bad instinct, and then try and work out what the root cause of it is. And if you're in a job and you're getting that too much, it's important to kind of peel the onion and work out why. It might not be the issue with the business. It might be that you're just not in the right spot for you. But I think that's really important. So you really understand the authentic reason within you, why you're feeling the reason for change. And then you can work out what you want that to be. So whether that's going into another company, whether you've got this voice in your head telling you that you've always been passionate about something, but you've never been able to find a job that actually allows you to do that thing. That's a really good reason to go and set up on your own. But there is one thing I would say is just take care of your basic needs. So I love the idea of people who are risk takers, but and I'm kind of like medium risk level, I would say. And I've been working for 26 years. So, I'm at a very different stage than a lot of people who'll be listening to this. But do make sure that you've got enough ground cover, that you've got enough pennies in the bank or dollars in the bank to be able to explore what you want to do, get the right investment in what you want to do, and get a proper business plan together, because you need to know what success looks like. If you bring a partner in, you've got to be aligned in collaboration on what success looks like and that you're heading in the right direction. And then if you get any funding, that's the next level. You've got to convince somebody else that they're going to part with their cash. So I would say, do listen to your gut, but don't be too reactive. Make sure that you've got a good 6 months to a year where you can take care of your infrastructure, and have a really good plan and do your networking before you leave. Make sure that you're not kind of like leaping into the great unknown without harnessing your network and already putting your plans in place.
So did you know then, while you were at Canada Goose, that you had perhaps realized, like, I've hit my wall here and I'm ready to go and embark on something? Was it an intuition that you had?
Yes, definitely. I mean, you don't kind of stay at a brand for so long without realizing when it's time for, and also I have to say, after being there for 11 years, that brand also needs a good, fresh reset as well. So I was very ready for that. So I think that 18 months, almost like 18 months into, or to a year into thinking about doing your own thing, if it's specifically your own thing, then start to think about the network, start to think about communities that you can leverage whilst you're there, while still remaining extremely professional to the business that's employing you, to start kind of like putting feelers out there for whether this idea has legs.
Love that. Testing your audience, knowing the market is the key to anything becoming successful in entrepreneurship. And you had 25 plus years to do it before you did it. So anyone who's listening and wants to be an entrepreneur, I know you guys might not all have 25 years being able to work at another company and then doing it, but there's something to be said, and slow and steady wins the race. Penny, where can everyone find out more about you and the company on social media or connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name there is Penny Brook. My long name's Penelope, but I use Penny. And then on sustainavate.com as well, you can sign up and hear from us there. So, and, what I would really love to leave this on is that, as Sustainavate, we call ourselves reimaginers. For your audience, I think embracing what it is to reimagine or reinvent is really important. The path by which things have always been done is not necessarily the right path. We know right now that the way in which business is done is not working out for the world and is not working out for many people that live on it. So, that's where we saw the opportunity with Sustainavate. But I think, for your audience, where is their reimagination going to take them? How do they reimagine their path forward? Or how do they reimagine the projects that they work on? So they go in and they do a great pitch towards their boss that everybody wants to be a part of.
And what is the first step for somebody who wants to be more sustainable? Just like look more sustainable, dress more sustainable, have more sustainable mindset. What is the simplest thing they could do to feel like they are doing enough on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I think it's about proactivity. So number one, it's education. So think about the main things that you do in your life and how you consume, and pick the three things up and say, like, okay, I drink a lot of bottled water. Is that necessary? Do I need to drink bottled water? I'll tell you, in Canada, the tap water is better than the bottled water. So, so think about your habits and think about if you can do it differently. Am I gonna? There's a great kind of movement at the moment on just challenging yourself to buying 5 pieces of new and always putting something into resale. So if you only got 5, then you've probably got more money to spend and it's going to be better quality and you're going to think the purchase through more. So there's these tips that you can go through in terms of how you consume. Do you need to take the car? Can you take public transit? So it's really about educating yourself on how you can do better and then giving yourself achievable goals on it, because you can get lost in this. So really think about, okay, I'm going to cut down using the car 50% of the time. I'm going to be much better at planning groceries so I don't waste so much. And I'm going to buy better stuff, pay a little bit more maybe, but waste less. And the main thing is around waste. Think about where waste comes from in your life and see how you can reduce it.
Perfect tips. Okay, and then do you mind just coming on really quick for the video, and we'll just get a quick snapshot of. I'm just going to ask you, for if you dream of working at a large corporation, what will set you apart in a job interview?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ready? I'm with the former CMO at Canada Goose. And Penny, I'm so curious, what will set somebody apart during a job interview if they want to go and work for a huge company like a Canada Goose?
Okay, so first impressions do matter. And so your presentation, whatever the personal style of you is really important. So think about that one. Your research that you've done before you've gone into the interview, make sure you're fully prepared to think about the questions they're going to ask, and what you're going to propose. And come, thirdly, with the distinctive brand of you. Make sure that you don't try and be the person you think they want you to be. Come and be the best version of yourself, and then you'll do just great.